Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today, where we will talk about recruiting strategies and especially how to successfully grow our team. This is already the second deep dive from our long-term event series with our partner Qonto, where we talk about different business units and how to scale them up. I'm super excited to have two guests today. At first, we will talk with Torben Rabe, the country director of the fintech Qonto, and Sebastian Britz, the CEO and founder of the startup DIGITTY. Before we dive into the topic, I will shortly introduce Uplink and myself, and will explain you some things regarding the agenda. I'm Nick. I'm working as a business development manager for Uplink. And besides some other tasks, I'm also responsible to organize like cooperation formats and especially webinars with our partners. That's why we're here today. Uplink is a network for IT freelancers. We have 2,500 IT freelancers in our network, and companies can tender their projects to us, meaning you can find exciting job opportunities and an active Slack community, events, partnerships, and much more. So if you're a freelancer and you don't know us yet, I will post our link in the chat, and you can always check us out. While the guys give some theoretical input on the topic today, you have the possibility to get rid of your questions. You can ask your questions with the button Ask a Question in the toolbar, and also have the possibility to upvote the questions of the other participants. So now I'm super happy to dive in the topic. So maybe before we talk exactly about the topic, it would be super cool if you both can give us a few sentences about yourself, maybe the stage you're currently when it comes to recruiting processes, or in general, the recruiting strategy, and of course, give us some more input about your company. Maybe, Sebastian, you want to start? I think you're still muted.
Sure. So thank you. I pushed the button, but it didn't work out the first time. So all good. So yeah, thank you very much for introducing me. Yeah, my name is Sebastian Britz. You would call it a serial entrepreneur. I built a couple of companies before. I started with 17, building my first very simple company, import-export. It went quite well, so I had an exit with 21, and then studied law, and did a couple of more investments as an angel investor in different companies in Europe. But then also I did found two more companies. One is an investment company based in Switzerland, which I sold last year actually, and DIGITTY. It's my new company. Actually, it's not that new anymore, but we are live, or at least live for 3 years now. We started as a pure matching platform where we matched freelancers and agencies with projects, and now we took the next step a year ago, 1.5 years ago, when we pivoted our business model to platform to automate the software project management itself. You can imagine DIGITTY like as a digital project manager, or as a virtual project manager who's always on your side when you're a project manager. So he's guiding you, or artificial intelligence is guiding you through the entire project lifecycle, really from the planning to the implementation to the maintenance of the project, and gives you always the right information, what you need to implement and plan your project. So you can imagine there's a start of a project always starting somehow with a briefing, and those kind of briefings sometimes filled with gaps, and these kind of gaps we can identify, or AI is able to identify them, and is enriching the data in the briefing, so that you as a project manager get direct actionable insights into your project. So we can predict how long a project will take, what kind of tech stack you should use, what kind of costs occur, so how much will the project cost. We can even predict how the product will look like at the end, and that will, and much more obviously, but that will help you to save a lot of time, especially in the beginning when you plan a project, and also helps you to implement the project much easier. So our goal is actually to kill complexity and uncertainty out of digital projects. So that's maybe very briefly of what we are doing at DIGITTY and about myself.
Cool.
Thank you.
Maybe Torben, you want to continue?
Sure.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. Super excited to talk today. And thank you, Sebastian, also for introducing yourself. I'm Torben. I'm the country director for Qonto Germany. Qonto is a fintech company, like Nick already said. We started out with the mission to create the banking solution that all companies love. Basically, our two founders were serial founders before. They founded something completely different before, which was e-cigarettes. And they realized during that time that business banking was really not up to the standard at that time. So they created their own solution. And it was at the beginning, very much focused on the business banking aspect. But now it's much more focused on the finance management solution, basically all-in-one solution for you to do your finance management. May it be bookkeeping, spend management, cash flow management, invoicing, point of sale, and any kind of integration that you may have in Germany with Datev, with bookkeeping software, but also with Google Sheets, Gmail, Slack, Stripe, things like that. You can integrate. We're a Series D company, so we started in 2016. Official product launch was in 2017. We're at 250,000 business customers now in 4 markets. In France, we started, but now we're in Germany, Italy, and Spain. And we're 600 Qontos, but also a lot more freelancers on top of that. So super interesting as we're really growing a lot. It's super interesting to talk about recruiting because it's one of the main things that sets you apart when you grow your team, how to recruit successfully, but then also to basically set yourself up for success and retain the talent as well. Nick, you're on mute, I think. It happened to me today twice, actually, after a long time.
Now it should work, right? I pressed it. You need to press it twice. I don't know why. Maybe the same thing happened to me. So maybe before we dive into like the strategies and talk about the aspect that were working for you both, or maybe not working so well for both of you, let's start with like the trends in general, just to have like a broader introduction to the theme. So what would you say in the last 3 to 5 years, which kind of developments you recognized and at the market, and how recruiting changed, maybe also due to things like COVID and the aspect that more people can work remotely right now? And Torben, you want to start?
I will. I think the first thing, at least since the start of Corona, is remote, of course. So hiring remotely has several implications. So at Qonto, at least before, we were fairly strict about being in the office, and that thinking has totally changed. So we offer custom contract, remote contracts, where you can work from wherever you want within our 4 markets. But then we even have some people that are in other countries as well. So that thinking has totally shifted. It was believed before, okay, that it cannot really work. I think it's also a matter of the maturity of the company, I guess. So if you're in the very early stages, perhaps you really want to harvest that culture and to be close together. So maybe it was also in our case that it just happened to be at a later stage in our life cycle. But it works really well. It had a lot of implications on how we need to work asynchronously together to avoid having the whole day full of meetings. But remote is a big topic, and it allows you to tap into talent that you normally maybe wouldn't have tapped in. So that is I think one driver.
When you say like you have job descriptions that are completely remote. Just out of interest, do you still have like onboardings on site, like 2 or 3 weeks, or is it really completely remote?
So it depends. So for full-time employees, the onboarding still happens in the headquarters in Paris. So you would go there for a couple of days, get your laptop, do your onboarding sessions, and then go back. And then it's more about team events. So I think the more your team is remote, the more important these kind of rituals are. May they be virtual or physical. And I think Sebastian you have a fairly remote company as well. So team events are super important as well. So we just had a team event last week where basically all Qontos within Germany, and they live across. Some live in France, some live in southern Germany, some live in Hamburg, and they came to Berlin for a team event. And I think those experiences are still super important. It's just that they don't have to happen every day.
Absolutely. We just had recently 3 weeks ago our team event as well, and was super nice actually to I don't know, to connect with people you work with like 9 months or something, and then seeing them the first time. And I can totally agree that after that you have the relation change, right, to the people and to the colleagues. It's like a deeper thing you have, and even if you just hang out for like 2 days within a team event, for example.
Yeah.
Cool. What is your perspective, Sebastian?
Yeah, first of all, I totally agree to Torben. I think also to you that these kind of team events are so important, like especially when you work remotely. I think that's the experience we all had over the last 2 years, I think. And I think it becomes even more important in the future, like when we have these kind of mixed models, like not working totally remote, but also partly in the office. I think that's what Qonto is doing. For DIGITTY, currently we decided to go fully remote for a certain period. We wanted to try it out because the team was also asking for it. Like we discussed pretty much everything in the team to see like how do they feel comfortable. So the more comfortable you are, the better you are also in your job, I think. And I think that's also why things are also changing. I think the recruiting is the same. Like you have to, like 10 years or 15 years ago, it's not only 3 to 5 years ago, it was mainly like this, that you as an employer decided to how things go. But now things are changing. So it's like a lot of team effort. It's a lot of what you decide together in a team. And same like when you do interviews, etc. Things are changing. People have different expectations than 10 or 20 years ago, or 5 years ago even, or now 3 years ago when it comes to remote work. I think one of the most interesting trends are that people or companies are hiring a lot of remote people, like not remote, but freelancers or digital or like agencies who work with them. So you outsource a lot more than earlier in earlier times, and that's totally fine. And for a startup founder like me, or for many others, it was always difficult to say, because there was always this kind of expectation from a venture capital company to say, oh, you need to hire like 100 people, like you have to grow really fast internally. But that changed also. So you have more opportunities also as a startup to hire not only people fully employed in your team, but also hiring freelancer and agencies outside, for example, software development or marketing agencies, even sometimes sales works quite well if you outsource those kind of things. And the advantage here is obvious. It saves time and money in many cases, because you hire people when you actually need it, and not like all the time when they're just like 3 months in a year where there's maybe not too much to work for them. So that is maybe one of the biggest changes, besides of the kind of culture, or let's say requirements on your company culture, what also changed in the last 10 years. I think what you had to adapt, or you as a company has to adapt to the situations on the expectations of your candidates who are applying at your company. Yeah.
When you talk about the outsourcing aspect, you were talking about like agencies or like a sales process you can outsource. Is it in Germany, is it in Germany like that you need to buy then the whole service if it's like abroad, for example, not in the EU? or is it, or can you also easily like just hire someone who is registered in another country, or are there some legal challenges coming with that?
No. I think that, I mean, you always have to be careful with Scheinselbstständigkeit in Germany. So if you hire a freelancer, you have to be careful like that he has at least another job, so that he's not like a full employed person. But I mean, we hired people from India, from the UK, from Tunisia, actually from everywhere. I mean, for us, it depends on the skills of the person, and we don't care where he comes from. And legally, there is no problem. You have to have a freelance contract with these persons, and that's fine. And the agency, it's different. And you have a contract, a different kind of contract, obviously, than with
Because then
with
you
a
don't,
freelancer.
yeah.
But it works really well. For us, it works really, really well, and it helped us a lot to speed up things, also internally, to speed up projects, and also saves time. Especially, by the way, we are not as big as Qonto at DIGITTY. We are a kind of early stage, like pre-Series A, and so we have like 10 people working for us internally, and then there are a couple of freelancer and agencies who work with us on the side. And for us, it's a lot also a cost thing, like really hiring developers, like very good developers in Germany. It's highly expensive and almost not payable for a small startup, especially. Like when you grow and get more funding, it's possible, but especially in the very beginning, it's very difficult. And then maybe outsourcing to different countries is maybe a good option.
Yeah, for us, it's also about the expertise itself. So sometimes there's only you can only find freelancers in terms of certain skill set that you're looking for, which is, I believe, what Sebastian also you experienced. So in our case, if I think about certain product cross-functional teams, there's really a lot of freelancers because they prefer being a freelancer, and so we're talking about specific projects together, but some of them have worked with us together for a long time. So it's really normalized, and it's a trend. It changes the recruiting in the sense that there's more in the last few years. Really, both the remote and the outsourcing part play a much bigger role now. And I think especially for remote, it's the expectation setting is different. So if you don't offer anything, a lot more candidates would not consider you as an employer.
Yes.
And I think the same goes for a third trend, which is more on the what you stand for. And some candidates really look into climate change, sustainability, or diversity topics as main drivers. And they really ask you, okay, look, what are you doing in that case? And if you cannot offer something, particularly for the younger generation, then it might be a problem. Yeah, and they might not consider you.
Yeah, totally agree. I had this also a couple of times. I would even say 3 out of 10 people like who apply and are in the job interview, they are actually directly asking you, what are your values? What are your core values of your company? What are you standing for? And we had even like people like working for us, and I really appreciated that they were really aware of these kind of diversity topics, and I really liked it because it's like things are changing so fast. And as a director or whatever, you have so many things on your plate, and you cannot think about everything. And if people remind you on things to think about, then you learn. Like especially like also me, like every day I learn so much from my people who work with me and give me advice. And because it's a very difficult topic, diversity and everything, it's hard to think about to make everything right at the first time. So that's like, obviously, as a startup, you always have this kind of opportunity to make mistakes. That's a good thing about being in a startup. But at the end, when you make even a job description, you have to be so careful, like how you write it, and to not offend anyone, etc. And especially if you want to be a bit bold or a bit different with your job description to differentiate yourself from the crowd of other employers. Then you have to be very careful, and but it's challenging, but it's also fun. I mean, for both sides.
I think especially with these topics, it's just a learning project. In 5 years, hopefully, we're all used to kind of adapt our language, and then it will be the new normal. The topics you were talking about is I totally can confirm them just from the freelance side. I know even like during the developments with COVID and everything, there were still becoming more the trend of the increasing trend of people who are becoming freelancers basically reminded, and also so that remained. And also there are super many freelancers in general. When they show their portfolio, they have already some industries they totally will exclude. And I already know when we post some projects where maybe like super interesting 5 or 10 years ago from like big finance companies who are obviously not a cool startup as Qonto, like really traditional finance companies where you know where they get their money from and everything, that are not like the topics freelancers are super interested. It's more about the new startup who are really trying to build something new and having an impact. At least in our community, it's the case. Cool. So the trend, just like to summarize it shortly, the main trends is of course outsourcing that also comes with more and more remote requirements. People want to work more and more remotely, and of course the upcoming generation has different values when it comes to the actual job. When we talk now about like the components of the recruiting strategy, there are like many components, of course, like more than 20 probably we could talk about, but maybe you can tell us what are like the most successful parts of a recruiting strategy that worked out for you super well. Maybe Tom, go ahead. Sebastian.
Yeah. No, please. No, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just jumping in.
Go ahead, Sebastian. Go ahead.
Okay, cool. I mean, we talked about it also before. I think that for us, a lot of things which were most obvious didn't work that well. Like there's so many job platforms on the market currently. The only one which actually worked out for us really well is LinkedIn by now. We rarely use maybe Xing or whatever. Xing, maybe if you have someone concrete in mind, like someone person, like you say, okay, you can go to this person, but in general, like to reach the mass and to reach really good people also internationally, because for us, it is very important to have like people from all over the world working for us, not like only from Germany. Actually, only my co-founder and me, we are the only Germans in the company, which is good. But I think it's just the best place to get the best best people. I almost said resources, and I don't want to say resources anymore. So I'm trying to say people, because it's much better than naming a person a resource.
Or talent. I think talent is also nice.
Or talent is even better. Yeah, exactly. That works really well, but everything else never really went really well, except like maybe meeting people, and obviously best thing is your network, right? Like people meeting, but at the end you will also only see like how good this person is and how good you can work with the person, and the other way around, obviously, when you actually started working with someone. That's like obviously also, and lesson I learned a lot.
Yeah, I 100% agree. So first of all, on the channels, I think LinkedIn is pretty much the only place that has worked for us. On other job platforms and job ads, we so far haven't had a good experience. Maybe we just didn't do it well, but at least it didn't work so well for us. And it's really like depending on the position, it's really a numbers game. So it depends on the position. So if you're looking for sales talent, especially in the last 2 years in Germany and in Europe, it got really hot for all kinds of profiles, and it was really hard to find anyone. So you need to be quick in the recruitment process itself. So sometimes it's not just about the channel that you're looking for and the number of people that you contact, but it's also about the process itself and how quick you are and how professional and upfront you are with the recruits. So we normally talk to candidates and tell them, okay, 20 days is our goal for the whole process. So you receive an offer or not after 20 days. And depending on whether there's holidays and so on, that's ambitious sometimes, depending on the role as well. And what has worked really well for us is referrals actually within the company. So we incentivize there's a Slack channel, and we work with a tool called, I think it's Trusty, where you can everyone has a link, a personal link that you can send. And then you would know who referred the most, and there's a scoreboard and there's prizes as well internally to refer people. And we see that not only are those the ones that tend to start the recruiting process the most, but it's also the ones with the highest success rate when accepting the offer, when working in the company. So it has worked really well for us. So it's generally a good channel, I would say, and you should tap into that. Of course, I'm saying that having 600 Qontos, it really depends on your size as well. But generally, the network is great, and incentivizing someone to do that. I've been on that end as well. I referred, for example, some people to other companies as well. So it's really about the network, I would say.
Yeah.
And for that, Sebastian, I think I know what you're going to say, but go ahead.
No, I didn't want to interrupt you. I just wanted to say yes. So please follow up. So I didn't want to interrupt you.
Yeah, I think in order for that to work, you need a well-working employer brand. So you need to. So Sebastian mentioned it before. It's all about what do you stand for. So and what sets you apart from others. So it can be in the job description, like you said, Sebastian. Can be a variety of things, but you need to put yourself out there and stand for something. It can also mean attending campus events, even though you might not immediately see the impact in terms of applications. Maybe people have you in mind later. But employer branding is super important, I would say.
Just one more question, because you were saying you also I don't know, attend like fairs and stuff to talk to people who are like graduated soon. Is it also part of your strategy in general that you have a lot of working students, for example, and then they stay in the company? Are you doing that actively, or is that not the case?
It is. I mean, that's definitely a good idea. We had actually really good working students in our company. The thing is, when you are in Berlin, people come here for maybe half a year or for a year, and then they usually, or not usually, but some go and they just go to their home city, whatever. And we had the disadvantage in this case that people actually wanted to come here to Berlin just for the internship and then went back to their university where they come from. So these people were really good, and we would love to keep them, but they had to go back to their home and to their home city where they're studying or whatever. But there are obviously other options, or other cases, where people can stay. So I guess it's a good option, first of all, to get to know each other, to get to know someone. And I know it also from other people, from other companies, especially like when you are in law firms, for example. It works really well. You get these kind of law students into your law firm, and they work like for the whole study there, and then at the end they become an associate or whatever. And in many cases, and I know this because I know so many lawyers here in Berlin, especially because of my history, and these people became partner later on in the company, because these people are the ones who really show that they want to have the job. They're really motivated, and they sometimes bring the best, let's say, skills, and not only skills, but also brings a lot of success to the company, because they identify themselves a lot to your company, because you gave them the opportunity as an employer that they can start here, find a job, and get well paid, and then and if you treat them well, then they also want to stay. And I think that's a very good opportunity to hire good people.
Yeah.
And would you say in general that changed as well over the years, that sometimes also because of all the remote work and all the opportunities, that it's harder to keep talent in the company than, for example, like five years ago. I don't know. I feel like often when opening up LinkedIn, you get so many job offers, and every opportunity sounds kind of nice, kind of interesting, and it's like so hard for. I feel like sometimes, often, it's really hard to stay super long in the company because we kind of having that trend of job hopping as well. Like every second article is kind of portraying you should change the company every 3 years, maximum 5 years, and then do something else. And it totally changed than 20 years ago, where you were maybe in a company 15 years, you have different positions, maybe you become a department manager and stuff. And these things, I feel like nowadays aren't that traditional anymore. It's more about like changing the jobs, getting more experience, and that's often also what students are already been told. So I don't know, sometimes I feel like, at least in my case, I know a few people who were kind of happy with their job, and then after a time they just changed because they felt the need to do so, even if it might be not appropriate in this case.
I think there's several trends happening here at the same time. So there's the generational aspect that you mean, I think. Mm-hmm. So it's more about okay, skills, requirements, and so on are shifting so fast, mm-hmm. and you need to adapt, and the way to do it is probably by job hopping and kind of hopping your way up the ladder. At the same time, the generational aspect is probably more about generally not being so committed to one company for the rest of your life. You will work a long time, and you cannot imagine working at Toyota for 50 years. That's just not the reality these days. But at the same time, the last few years, it has been extremely, the bargaining power has extremely been on the applicant side, on the, like, no matter, you were, in the last 2 years at least, you were really sure to find something. And now it's kind of shifting. And I read a report yesterday that a lot of, at least in America, a lot of employees that quit during Corona are now regretting it a little bit more, because now the job market has changed. So there's also the reality of the job market that has changed in the last months. So that will definitely have an impact as well.
Yeah, if you see the whole tech industry, like the big tech companies in the world, they fired a lot of good people, actually. What is good for the small companies like us to get maybe or smaller. But I think it's a lot also like how you retain people. It's the topic of company culture more and more. We addressed it in the beginning of the meeting, and like for us, I mean, like, if someone wants to leave and if someone has a dream, for example, going to Tesla, we had this case, you know, when we hired her, she said, when Tesla gives me an offer, I will go. And I said, okay, that's a good idea. If that's your dream, follow your dreams. That's the best thing what you can do. And this, if you, and that's also part of company culture, if you are transparent from both sides, you know, and people feel that in your company, then they trust you and you can trust them, and then people will not leave you easily. I mean, it's totally fine if someone has a dream and, or I don't know, gets a offer double of their salary, and that's a cool company with a cool culture and has a good opportunity to develop herself or himself, then it's fine. But in general, you have to have like we call integrity. I think that's a very important part. If you have this part in your company, you will not lose people easily. And if there's someone leaving, and there is always a reason, it can be a personal reason that someone found a new boyfriend or whatever, and then he lives in Hamburg or she lives in Hamburg or whatever, then they just move there. That's fine. I mean, then as an employer, you don't want to stand in their way. I mean, that's like the last thing you want to do. So just be honest and give your people, your talents, an opportunity to get better, like give them offers how they can grow themselves, and be open. And I think it's like, you cannot say anymore as an employer, I want to have this kind of requirement, I mean, this kind of skill set, and only if you have this skill set, then you fit to my company. It's ridiculous. I mean, you first of all, you don't find someone like this who fits 100% to your requirements. And then the second side is you have to find the people with the right motivation. And if there is a motivation and a certain type of skill set also available, then it's fine. And then at the end, it's maybe it changed a bit now because of the last months, but in general, there are still more jobs than good talents on the market. So you or we as an employer have to fight for the best talents, and that only works when you give them something what they maybe don't get somewhere else, or give them trust. You can play with your company vision, you can play with your own character, with your how you can best. I mean, there's no real right or wrong. I mean, you just have to find the right way to persuade the person to step in your company.
I completely agree. So I think there's a lot of things that you can do as a company to retain talent and to grow them within the company. So it's really about the learning aspect. At least that's how we try to do it, in terms of, okay, how can you make sure that the career track is clear for that person? What about internal mobility? But it's also about just your normal job. So continuous improvement on your job is super important, and to give each person the feeling, okay, I'm staying here and I'm still learning. So that's, I think, the most important thing, to retain talent. And to be honest, it's much easier than to hire people. And it's a win-win for both sides.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think especially providing that culture where the employees have the security to tell, maybe at the moment I'm not happy anymore with my job description, maybe they want to go in a different department, or maybe you can adjust some tasks, especially when the team is bigger. I think that's always a nice opportunity. And to have someone who actually already knows the company, knows the processes, the people to talk to, if that person starts in a different department where might be not the same experience as a new talent, you still get like amazing results in the long run, right? Cool. So before we dive before we start answering the questions of the participants, I have one last question. Torben, you already talked about it a bit when it comes to the actual hiring process, how it looks like, because I feel companies still, it's really a super big thing. I hear very often that people are applying and they never get any kind of feedback. They don't know exactly the loop. There is no transparent communication. You already said, Torben, it's like you try to provide a final, right? Like a final answer to the applicants within like 20 days, which is for a permanent position, I think, quite well. But how is the process? Do you have like a hard assessment? How many interviews are there? Is it always the same process, or maybe varies from position to position? Maybe you can give us some insight.
Yeah, sure. Happy to. So I think the first thing is, how can you find out about the positions, is either through our website or on Lever. So we post the positions both on our website and on Lever, where people can apply. Sorry, I just had to charge my laptop. Otherwise, I'm running out. And the process itself is fairly simple. So you first have an HR interview where one of our talent acquisition managers kind of just tries to get to know you and to understand whether the role will fit. Then there's a direct manager interview, and then we normally go into a skills test where you have a short exercise, which we then discuss in the skill test debrief. Normally with two people on our side, so it's usually the direct manager and someone else with the functional expertise on top of that. And then depending on the position, how senior the position is, it would be another interview. Back in the day, our founder, I think, interviewed each and every candidate in the last round. So, and I think he did that until we were 150 people. So like he had a lot of interviews, but I think it was valuable because obviously the first hires are super important for the culture. Like he just wanted to make sure that there's a certain fit with the Qonto values as well. and that person can grow within the company. So I think what's important within that is that the different interviews, it sounds like a lot, but it's usually like the steps, except for the SCO test, maybe where you need a few days, happen fairly quickly after each other. And it's really about being available to the candidates and to have the interviews with them. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's very similar to us, except that we don't have that many people joining in the beginning because we are much smaller. So it's obviously it depends really how big your company is. If you start small, then the processes are also smaller. But as your founders also did, Torben, it's for me and my partner Stefan the same. We actually start we do every interview by ourselves, and then we have like in the first meeting, usually I do, even it's not my topic, even if it's a software developer, for example, and I'm not a software developer, I have no background in it personally, but I just want to get to know the people first and see, like, do they fit into the company? Is there a general fit, and is it for them a fit, etc. I explain a lot about the product because for me it's very important that they see, are they really interested in what we are doing, and are they already thinking in that way? And then in the second step, I usually include also my partner, and then also for example, if we hire someone for our AI team, then I also put in our chief AI officer, for example, or our head of data science, who have a look and check them out. And then also in the where we have like also in the second meeting more questions, like where they have to prepare themselves sometimes 15 to half an hour, maybe an hour sometimes, to get a test, let's say, and then we will move on afterwards, give them the results to them, discuss with them the results. And then usually, like as a third and fourth step, which is also very important, what is only possible if you have a small team, that you invite your whole team also to meet this person. Because this person you are hiring has to get around with the existing team, and the other way around as well. If you have like 5 to 10 people in the company, then it's kind of a good idea to meet in person, or to meet at least online, so that everyone can check each other out a bit. Yeah, see, like ask some questions, like maybe also some business related questions sometimes to check, because like, as a team, you have to work together at the end. And if you have the feeling that someone is not able to work with you, then and the other way around, then you don't feel comfortable, and then you lose a lot of time and money. Then also at the end, if people don't get around with each other. So that's why I think for me it's important, as long as we are small, to bring the people also together before we actually sign a contract, let's say.
Yeah, it's a great point, because during Corona, I kind of forgot about the importance of the physical interview. But what we've seen is that the conversion of when you extend an offer to the person actually accepting it increases a lot if you have at least at one stage physical interview. And so we're trying to do our best. It's not always possible, but to have at least at one point where you see each other in person, because there's might be some things that you cannot tell from the video, and where you just you have exchanges before you go into the interview room and afterwards, and you just see if there's a personal fit. Although I have to say, with the virtual version, we had really good people that we onboarded. So yeah, it's something to consider.
Totally. Or what many companies are also doing is like kind of like trial days where you're somewhere like 5 hours. And in some cases also like a good opportunity sometimes. I personally had that twice, and also I was the one who decided after that first hour, maybe it's not exactly the thing I want to do company-wise. I think that can also be like a great...
Do you think it's a good idea?
I think it's a good idea to know more about the team, because of course actually the tasks, especially in the area where I'm working, like business development, where you need to, I don't know, get in touch with some new clients or partners and then developing strategies and stuff, you can't see how the actual process is in like 5 hours, but to have a feeling like how the team is working, how the culture is, if you feel comfy or not. I think for that, it's like a super good thing. After in that 2 cases I had, for example, I really had that feeling, the intention that is not the right case where I see myself going every day. And for that I think it was super useful. Task wise, I think it's more maybe something for like junior roles to give them like an onboarding in the precise task when they don't have working experience, for example.
Was it paid? Was it paid for?
It was actually like they paid, of course, the traveling costs and one night in a hotel to see how it's going, but the actual day was not paid. But in that case, I really liked it to have like an idea of it, but it was also the case, it was directly after my studies. So I think nowadays, if I would take 1 day holiday off to work 6 hours somewhere, I think I wouldn't do that.
Yeah, no, I'm just asking because there's one neobank with a negative example on that front, where they, back in the day, I think in 2018, 2019, they asked candidates, even if you're a PR and comms manager, they asked you to get 200 people on the app to use it, you know, and to call basically your family and friends as part of the interview process.
Okay, then.
And so that's quite aggressive, even if your role is not sales related. So yeah, so that's borderline illegal, I would say.
Right. Same with like coding tests or like you're handing in a concept for 3 days to see if you're a good fit, right?
Yeah,
I think. Cool. So maybe now let's go over to the questions we're having. The first question, it's quite precisely, is: do freelancers cost more than employees? Does it depend on the duration of employment? Thanks. I think it's really hard to give a precise answer on that, but maybe you can kind of illustrate the developments, because I think if hiring someone, often it's the case, is a freelancer the better fit or a permanent employee?
Yeah. Shall I first?
And maybe you also need to say about which role we're talking about, because I think it really varies if it's like a marketing freelancer or IT freelancer.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it really depends. I mean, that's a typical lawyer answer actually, but it really depends here, because first of all, it depends on what market the freelancer is based in. If you're talking about Germany, then a freelancer is quite often a bit more expensive than an employee, but it really also here depends on the negotiation. I mean, if you have a startup, a small startup, you have always a good reason to say, no, I cannot pay you like, I don't know, 150 euro per hour. When we talk about a software developer, full stack developer, that happens quite often. And then I had these things happening that people ask for at the end 12,000 euro per month for full stack development, and I say, are you crazy? I mean, it's like impossible to pay for a small startup in the first or second year, and then you have to explain them how and why, and then it's also understandable for him why this is maybe a bit too much. On the other hand, I mean, if you can ask for it, if you go to Bosch or to Siemens and the big ones, obviously, but that's really about negotiations, I think. And because for us, it's important that we pay fairly. I think that's the most important thing, that both sides feel comfortable, and you have to be also here very transparent and open, and for both sides, obviously. And there's always an opportunity. I mean, I wouldn't do it currently, but we have also freelancers in India, for example, but we pay mainly German prices for them because they were really good, and there's not much. If you have good people, they cost everywhere in the world round about the same like here in Germany. Maybe it's a bit cheaper than here in Germany, but it is not that you get it for free if you go on a different market in India or whatever, because you always hear these kind of 9 euro per hour, etc. And when you hire a developer in India, but then you get also this kind of results.
Yeah. I think generally I think from a freelancer side, totally, Sebastian is totally right. It really depends on the role and it's supply and demand, I would say. So if you look at freelancing platforms, depending on what you look for, the daily rates range from, I don't know, 300 euros to 1,500. It really, really depends. But what many people underestimate is also the Lohnnebenkosten. So basically, if you have a full-time hire, obviously you need to compare it full cost. And that's quite high in Germany. So that's the first point. And then the second point is from the freelancer perspective. If you, and I know that with Uplink, obviously many of you know this, is sometimes I deal with first-time freelancers as well, because they previously did other roles, and I keep telling them, no, like you need to, like, please consider like what you still need to pay in terms of taxes, in terms of insurances and so on. So obviously you need to take that into account as well for yourself, to set a price for yourself. So that's regarding the fairness as well. It needs to work for both sides in Germany as well. So, yeah.
I just wanted to add one thing, is because I said that the freelancer is always more expensive, or it's sometimes more expensive, but it's sometimes also totally fine, because I hire someone for 3 months or 4 months, not for a full year. And then obviously then it's a much better deal for the company to hire a freelancer in that case, and like a full employee you have to pay the whole year over. So and you don't know, like especially in these uncertain times, how things are going. Then maybe sometimes a freelancer is more secure thing than having someone for years in your company. You never know.
Especially
it really depends.
Sorry.
Oh, fine.
Yeah. Especially when you have a precise project scope. And also, I think it really depends a lot on the talent. So if you're looking for like a really niche talent, especially in development, it's super hard to find a full-term employee, and maybe easier to find a freelancer here. And regarding that, what you said, especially with first-time freelancers, we also experience quite often that they didn't really calculate their hourly rate super well. They just thinking like, oh, it should be a bit more, that I had the fixed salary first. But I think there are like amazing calculation tools for that out there, because when you're sick, you won't get like your daily rate anymore. You also need to care about how to tackle your pension and things like that. So it's often a thing that first-time freelancers really kind of sell themselves a bit under. The next question, it's I think someone is maybe looking for a job. In which cases you are on the look for good freelancers in the field of interim product positions? But maybe that's super interesting to see. Are you doing product management just internally? Is it something you're also doing in freelance, and why you're doing so?
From our perspective, we have all sorts of contracts in that sense. So. And there's also interim roles that we have, both on the product side, but also on the business side. It's all fairly open in that sense.
Yeah. For us, it's mainly like in the current situation, or the current phase we are in, and stage, we are more or less looking for full-time employed product manager. Let's say that's like what we would look like for, but as Torben said, it's really difficult to find someone in this field. It's really difficult to find good experienced people in the digital product management position, or for digital product manager position. But it's like, as I said in the beginning, it depends on what is your standing outside, how good is your network, how good is your product, yeah. And actually, I like Philip Kunz's question, because that you miss out on divas that way. Would you have hired Steve Jobs? And I really like that one. Actually, I would definitely hire someone like Steve Jobs, obviously, but it's really difficult to find someone actually who is a diva and is actually really good. I mean, there are a lot of divas, and there are a lot of people who think they're really good. But when they actually have to work on a task, then you figure out how good this person really is. And but definitely hiring someone like who is a diva, and like I would call it someone creative. It's very important. I think we talked about this topic, diversity. It's not only about being from from Pakistan, or are you a woman or not. It's also about how your team is built, like in a diverse way, like also from the character side. That's what I want to say, because if you have everyone like being like quiet, or everyone being a diva, then it doesn't work out. So you have to have a good mix of people in your team, and if you have the right mix, then you will be successful with your product or with your company for sure.
Next question is also kind of going in that direction and super interesting. Is there a quality of hire tracking metrics? So do you use some sort of machine learning to actually have an indicator for what salary might be adequate for a diva? Or also maybe you can also say something about how do you...
Philip, are you a diva? Is that what you're asking? We don't have a fancy candidate assessment tool, to be honest. So it's really about manual sourcing and using LinkedIn in a smart way. We do work with talent agencies sometimes that do seem to use these kind of algorithms, but from our experience, the manual finding of people you still need to do at the moment. But perhaps we haven't leveraged that much. And once we identify the candidates in terms of assessment, it's also just feedback forms on that we fill out on Lever, to be honest, on certain metrics, like how well do you think it works within the team? What's the level of mastery? What about the communication skills and so on? So it's not really fancy metrics in that sense, because you might overcomplicate things when in fact you should focus on the basics. So I think there's a slight risk that you over-engineer, I would say. Yeah.
I have nothing to add to this. I would agree totally to this. Thank you, Torben.
When talking about these metrics, what do you guys think in general about showing the annual salary openly in the job description? Is that something you're considering, or you think it's not the right way to do things? Because I feel like there were so many ambivalent discussions about that recently.
We never did it, to be honest. It's not that we want to hide anything or don't want to be transparent. It's more or less, for me, getting the right people or getting good people, it's like if you say, for example, the salary is 50,000, for example, yeah, and then I could lose a lot of people because they would say, I'm worth 100K and per year. So I would rather say, let's get into touch, let's talk to each other and see like what is the expectation from both sides, and if there's a will, and if you really need someone and the other person really wants to work with you in that company, you will find a way to make it happen. And if not, the gap is too big, obviously. But in general, there is I think you would lose. That's at least my thoughts. It's not about right or wrong. It's more or less that I would think that I might lose people who could fit really well to my company, but I did the wrong salary or put the wrong salary in the job description.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's super interesting because sometimes you only discover in the process of interviewing several candidates for the same role whether your salary is competitive or not. And so that's one complication that I see. The other thing is for lead positions, for example, in terms of stock options, sometimes the value of the stock options is not really clear to the candidates, so they just see the salary, and that's also something that's sometimes difficult to explain, I would say.
Very good point. Yeah, that's exactly like the stock option or the virtual shares you can offer to lead positions, or not even only lead. I mean, what we are thinking of is even to give every single employee like small shares, but at least that everyone is benefiting from the success of the company at the end. But it's like something like in the process, it's like, but it's an idea which is also good, and that's something like, especially like when you hire young people, like young talents, or doesn't even be young, like every kind of talent, it's really difficult to understand what does it actually mean if I get a virtual share. Most people in Germany at least don't know about stock options or virtual shares, phantom shares. There are different names even for it, and I think that's why it's best to discuss this and explain it openly and transparently in the meeting or in the job interview.
Totally. I think it's the same with like commission models. Sometimes they're not so easy to get at the first point how it's going. Just from the employee side of things, I experience sometimes in the past that it can be also a bit frustrating when you go to like 3 interviews, because it's not cheap to talk about it at the first interview in some roles, and then discover you're like maybe so far away, and then you already got like really thrilled to that stage, and then it's not a match at all. But I totally agree with you both that if there's a way, and maybe both sides are going like one step to each other, it's so good to start the conversation and talk about it, because then there will be also a solution, especially when the candidates are committed to the vision and the tasks of the job, right? So the next question is also from Philip. It's like, I think, Tom, you already kind of answered it. Isn't the low time spent company metric an indicator for lack of vision?
Yeah, if you job hop, if you go from one company to another, and so I understand it. Yeah, it's certainly something that would raise eyebrows at some point. So if it's, let's say, half a year here, half a year there, but sometimes there's reasons for it as well. Maybe it's some personal issues. Maybe your partner had to move, or I don't know. So it's something we would ask in interviews then for details. Yeah, but we've seen it in the. Generally, the duration at a startup, the average duration is comparably low. I think in Germany it's like maybe 2.5 years, maybe. So, like, what do you consider short? For me, it would be half a year here, half a year there, and it's not an internship, but a full-time position. So that's would be concerning to me.
Yeah. And it's also like if this person is like 10 years on the work market, and the person like changed once or twice after a year, and the rest is like 4 years, 3 years, or 5 years, whatever, then it's also fine. It also depends, and you have to ask this in the job interview then why, what happened, and at the end you have to trust the person, and you have a good feeling with the person, then it doesn't matter if you change too quickly.
Sebastian, do you sometimes ask for references and talk to the people?
You mean like
the past employers?
Yeah, actually, I never asked, and sometimes I regretted why I didn't do it, to be honest. But my partner, like when we hired the wrong person, it obviously can happen, and it's for both sides maybe also doesn't work out always well. Then you always think next time you ask for references or for get a call with your former boss or whatever. You know, that's like it could be helpful, and I think more and more people do it actually. I heard, at least I heard of it, but I'm not sure if that's common practice. Right now. Practice.
I don't think it's common practice.
No, I don't think so either.
No, I in the finance industry sometimes they do it. They do an extensive background check, and they call every past employee. But in the startup world, it's not really. We did it once. For our marketing lead position, because it was a very important role for us.
Yeah.
And in my case, the founder, for example, didn't really ask for references, but asked that I would have a call with a German friend of his that knew the German market really well. So he basically asked for a second opinion himself outside of the company. Yeah.
But I think that's fine. I did this actually before. We have an advisor. She's quite successful she was quite successful in the past, and I also asked her to interview one of our sales. It was a sales growth manager, I think, head of growth, and there was no problem. So both sides agreed on it, and there was no problem at all, and it was good, and the meeting went really well. So I can only recommend this kind of approach actually.
Cool. So the next question is about the theme of when it comes to product owner or project management. If I get it right, it's basically in which cases you would consider hiring someone freelance in that field. Does it come just out of the struggle not finding someone permanent, or what are your struggles and pains when you think about hiring a freelance PO?
For me, I mean, it's always a question of IP. Like when you have a product manager, for example, and it's working on you have an AI product, for example, like in our case, then you always are like maybe a bit, or you're hesitating maybe in the beginning. But there are also contracts by now, like that you can secure your IP, etc. But still, like when you have like a product manager, I would rather like to have him really on board working with us in the team, because you have to dive so deep into the product, into like in every department you have to look in actually. So I think that's something like I wouldn't outsource, let's say, or like have someone only interim. Interim is maybe, it depends what means interim. So is it a year, is it 2 years, or is it just a month or 3 months? But it's difficult. But in general, like in sales marketing, I wouldn't have a big problem to have someone interim working with us on a certain topic to speed up things, to get because as we said, it's really difficult sometimes to find the right people at the time when you really need it. And even if you start looking for someone 3 months in advance, it doesn't mean anything. Sometimes you need a year to find the right person. So that's why sometimes maybe an interim position is a good choice in the moment when you need it.
Yeah, in our case, we have product managers that are external, that do freelancing. And it works relatively well for some feature specific. If your scope is clear in the sense of like our principle is one piece flow. You work on one thing at the same time. You don't work on several things. So it's fairly easy then to say, okay, so you work on this feature, on this product launch, and that's your mission. And perhaps you extend afterwards or you don't. But that's the thing. However, it's rather the exception than the norm, I would say, for product managers, because we have a very specific way of operating in terms of very lean management style. And if you're a freelancer for a very limited period of time, perhaps that's difficult. But it has worked out. It has worked out for us.
Cool. And now on the salty question, I would say, do you push employees from competitors? Are you afraid of doing it yourselves? And also the kind of a question that goes in the same direction, do you forbid your employees to get hired by competitors?
So
I think
we normally, I mean, we have a non-compete clause in our contract, but yeah, in that, and our competitors do as well, I guess. We had one freelancer incident when this happened, someone coming to us, and that was okay. But in general, it's kind of collaborative. It's basically the same thing as with maybe with bidding on each other's keywords on Google. The only happy person there is Google, and you just increase the costs. So maybe with that you also increase the cost of doing business.
Yeah. Same here. So there's not much what to like. We not like really try to hire people from other companies like directly. Usually we do job descriptions. Am I right? Like, is it? Yeah. So and then.
At least not consciously, right? I mean,
at
sometimes it just happens.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. If someone is applying from a different company, from a competitor, then I wouldn't say no. But in general, because you look for good people. At the end, you look for good people, and you don't want to steal from others on purpose, let's say. And no, so, and we don't say you cannot go to a competitor. I think it's like somehow. Like when you're a small startup, especially like us, and there's someone like going directly to a possible competitor, I think then you did also something wrong with your people, because I don't know. if they feel, if you have created like kind of an atmosphere of trust in a small startup and a big like 600-person company like Qonto, it's really difficult, I guess. But then you have to, you build a kind of a relationship to your people. And if you did it right, then they would probably not go directly to a competitor.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say that wouldn't happen. And otherwise, you did something wrong, I guess.
Cool. The last question is about how what about ways of vesting for employees? So not only stock, but other motivators. For example, getting your own startup founded after 5 years with 200K, or or getting a Lucid Air as a company car after 3 years. So I think it's in general about the other possible investors.
It's interesting because I think it's a good idea because it's not only about vesting. It's like really always everyone has different expectations. And we also had the idea because there's different kind of people who are applying in your company. There are people who are also entrepreneurs or want to be entrepreneur in 5 years' time. And then we also discussed this with one like really senior manager who applied in our company, and we thought, okay, because when you have a product where you can build different products out of it later on, then you can also give him an incentive and say, maybe not now, but we can how do you call it again? We can make a new company out of DIGITTY, let's say, and you will be CEO and you have shares of that company, obviously, as well. So we fund you somehow and give you IP and know-how, etc. So that's also an opportunity, which is, I think, a very interesting option it would be for me at least, if I would be in that position. And I mean, like company cars, etc. I mean, for a salesperson, if you have like people who have outgoing, that's probably very interesting. But I think it also changes. I think not too many people want to have a car anymore, but maybe more and more, maybe still there.
I love the picture of the Rolex wearing salesman in a fast car.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think the difference with the stock options is that they grow in value the more successful the company is, and the car isn't. And you might not want a Lucid Air in 3 years' time. I think that's a difference, that the success of the company doesn't have an impact on the value of what you're receiving. In that case, so I mean, maybe I think it's a great idea. I think there's much more that we can play with, also in terms of just like what's the tax effect for the person, what are the impacts when that person leaves before the end of the vesting period, and so on. Like there's a lot of things that you can play around with. Yeah, and you can still buy the Lucid Air with the money. Yeah.
Well, and I think especially like the more trends going like to get some like a split of the whole development of the company, that you kind of get that person who thinks like in the bigger picture. Because I worked in sales as well, and often you kind of have that elbow feeling where sometimes, because you just get like all the benefits on the things you're achieving, and the other person just getting that if you are achieving that and that. And I feel like especially in a startup or in a less hard way, it's super important to find something that the people are standing behind the bigger mission. Perfect. So I think there are no more questions right now. It was super nice today talking to you about the recruiting strategy. In general, we are planning to have like more deep dives, maybe talking about how to build a sales unit and put the spotlight on different kind of business unit. Probably the next event will be in the beginning of autumn, and we will announce it as well via LinkedIn and in our Slack workspace. So we would be very happy if you're joining us as well next time. Thanks so much for your time, guys, and see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.